Welcome to Conversations with the Candidates, Election 2019, brought to you by iBerkshires.com in collaboration with the Northern Berkshire Community Television. Over the next 5 episodes, we will meet the 14 candidates running for City Council in North Adams. The top 9 vote getters will be seated as the new City Council, and so we hope to bring you some insight into who the candidates are. Now, here are the candidates. Okay, I want to welcome Jason LaForest and Wayne Wilkinson, who are with us this episode. Jason, you are running for your
second term.
Second term, okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so voters will remember you?
So I grew up in North Adams. I'm a dad. I have 2 teenage children and 2 teenage stepchildren also. I'm a nurse. Many people know me from working as a nurse locally. And I was very involved in music in the church for a long time, so a lot of people will remember me from that as well. I've always been interested in politics and cared very much about what happens in North Adams. So I was very happy in 2017 to run for City Council, and I have jumped into the deep end of the pool and got involved in the Democratic Party locally and across the state, and serve on a policy committee for the Massachusetts Municipal Association also. So it's been a wonderful 2 years. I've certainly enjoyed working with Mayor Bernard and Councilor Wilkinson and the other councilors in tackling the city's issues.
Okay. And Wayne, you are also running for re-election.
I am running for
what would this be?
This would be the 4th term.
Fourth term.
And I've enjoyed it very much. That's why I wanted to do it one more time. A little bit about me. I'm
Sure.
a 40-year resident of, or 40 plus now, resident of North Adams. Came here for my first job after college. Got a grant for $50,000, and in those days that was a lot of money. I built a greenhouse on South Church Street, and that was the best job I ever had. I had 9 mentally challenged adults as my workforce, and after the family came, didn't pay too much, so I had to move on to other things. Have had a successful business here in North Adams in real estate appraisal for the last 30 years. We're a real family company. Both my son and daughter work with me as certified appraisers. Because North Adams has been good to me, I've always wanted to give something back. I've been on the planning board for over 20 years. I've been on the redevelopment authority for 2 terms. I've been the chairman of the mobile home rent control board for the last 28 years. So
that's a lot of time in public service.
It's a lot of time in public service. My wife calls herself the council widow because I'm never really home too much, but it's fun. I enjoy it. I find time to do other stuff too.
So what do you, if you get elected, what are you hoping to do this term?
Well, there's a couple of pet projects that I might like to try. There's a problem with the planning board, and I just mentioned that I was on it for a long time.
For a long time.
And being able to enforce site plan review. We have a site plan review process where any business that wants to come into the city has to go before the planning board. They get a set of conditions usually in order to be able to open business. There's nothing on the books for reinforcement. You can send the zoning officer out, which is Bill Moranti, and the building inspector. They can fine them, but it costs too much nobody pays the fines, and it costs too much to take them to court. So I think I'd like to work on an ordinance. There's other communities that have this, that put some meat into what the planning board can do. They can actually pull a permit if somebody is doing something against the law.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know I used to cover Southern Vermont, and Manchester, Vermont has a very, very strict site review plan. And there was one of the times McDonald's was redoing all of their fast food restaurants, and they were painting them all the old-fashioned colors, and they didn't go to the Manchester Site Review Board, and they forced them to repaint the entire thing, and they had to go through this whole process. The corporation had to come in. So obviously there's some more teeth to a site plan review. So that would be interesting.
Right now, North Adams doesn't have
one.
Right. So, but that's that's one of the few things I've got an idea to do.
And Jason, you said you jumped into the deep end. You got involved in a lot of things that were going on.
I am,
so,
yes.
yeah. So, what would you like to do in the next? Now that you've gotten your feet a little bit wet.
So I think that this council's been very active and
Yes.
proactive. Historically, councils have been reactive to the legislation and the budgets that the mayor's office brings to the council agenda. I have a particular interest in the legislative process, also in checks and balances, and so I want to continue that work. I also enjoy representing North Adams across the state as I meet with other municipal leaders from across Massachusetts through the MMA. But I think my primary love as a city councilor is ensuring that the checks and balances that the residents of North Adams deserve are protected in the council chambers.
And can you give me an example
Sure.
of how you would do that?
Yeah, so a great example is there was an attempt by the administration to close the gun range at one point, and we determined through public comments, individuals coming to council and contacting councilors, that the city wanted to keep the gun range. And so, over a process of months, we worked with the mayor to ensure that the gun range stayed open. So too with lifeguards at Fish Pond or Windsor Lake. Several councilors, Councilor Cohen and I in particular, were contacted by members of the community who were upset about that decision. And so we were able to work again with the council, with the other councilors and the administration to ensure that a happy medium was reached, so that most people were happy with the outcome of keeping lifeguards there at least part-time, and then the administration was okay with the solution as well.
Yeah, in a recent city council meeting, there was some talk back and forth that there was a feeling that maybe the executive office wasn't as communicative with the council. Do you feel that way, Wayne, or do you think it's?
I think it's just a difference in style from one mayor to another. I mean, Dick Alkenbright certainly was very open and robust and greeted everybody with as much love as a person can give, to be honest with you. And Tom is, I think, a little bit more reserved. I think it's anything negative. I just think it's a different way of doing business. And he's changed over the last couple of years too, in doing it a little bit. He's a little bit more open. We get a lot of behind the scenes emails and stuff. If something's going to happen in town that's important, we get an email ahead of time, so we're not taken by surprise.
And I know the council has been taken by surprise a few times.
Yes,
Because
we-
I've heard about stuff that has taken you by surprise.
Sure.
Not just simply with this mayor, I mean, in the past as well.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree. I think each mayor has their own administrative style, and each council has its own chemistry as well. And when you
Yes.
put 9 people who are willing to, put themselves out there, willing to run for office in the same room, there are a lot of big personalities. So too of the mayor, who has a strong administrative background. And so there are times when we're all friends, but there are times when we butt heads, and there are times when we disagree on how to get from point A to point B. But I think ultimately, the 9 councilors, the mayor, and the city officers for that matter, and I'm speaking of the administrative officers in City Hall, each have different ideas, and we all have bad days, we all have good days, and I think for the most part we do communicate well and get along, but there's always room for better communication and more transparency in any relationship. So
yeah, and it's felt like there's been a lot of communication between the council, because certainly there was a time when the meetings were extending out quite a bit. In fact, Wayne had suggested moving up the time a little bit so everybody wouldn't be falling asleep.
Didn't go over well.
Didn't go over well, no. But do you see that as a sign of a healthy deliberative body? Because there's been a lot more deliberation, I will say. I mean, I've been covering the council for some time now, and this has been a very deliberative council. You guys look at everything with like a fine-tooth comb. So
absolutely,
Yeah.
I definitely see. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
So
you're right.
I definitely see the vast majority of us doing our homework, although I have a bad habit of asking questions that I already know the answer to at council because I want the debate and the deliberation to continue. But I think we have a great batch of counselors right now who are willing to do their homework. They're willing to call the mayor to task. The mayor and I are good friends, but we disagree on many things. And, sometimes it takes us a day or two to get over a disagreement, but, and with fellow councilors as well. But I think it is absolutely a sign of a very healthy debate and process.
So Wayne, you've been on the council for some time and other boards. Do you see this council as being very different from past ones?
Well, again, each council I've been on has its own unique personality, and it has to do a lot with the players that are there. There have been councils where some people hadn't done their homework. You can see them reading the agenda when they're right 15 minutes before it started. We don't have that council here now, but we're going to have after January, assuming that most of the incumbents
minimum 3 new people.
Minimum of 3 new people. That's going to take on a whole new personality, and how that group works together. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay. So on your time on the council, what would you point to as one of your biggest accomplishments?
Oh, I've had a couple. I wrote an ordinance or helped draft an ordinance that we had properties in the community that were in residential zones that were used commercially. But we have an ordinance in town that if you are not using it commercially for 2 years, you lose the grandfathering. Well, this is keeping commercial property use off the tax roll. So I drafted an ordinance so the 2-year limit was no longer valid, or not valid, but no longer was being used. And we've got the old Napa building in the West End was one. We had, I think, Hilo last night. Hilo was one. That could not be used again commercially because it had been closed for 2 years. So it's a matter of, I'm very happy with that. I don't know if this was something that I caused, but it may have been a coincidence. My very first time on council, I was just introducing myself to it. But I saw some injustice in the school system. And some of the kids were getting a second lunch because their parents had paid the bill.
Right, cold lunch, I think they would call it.
They'd get a sandwich. I thought that was discrimination. So first time I was ever vocal in the council chamber, but it felt pretty good, to be quite honest with you. And I brought it up. There was a big debate amongst all the councilors. Everybody denied it. The school system came in. They denied it, and that was the end of it. But it was interesting. The very next year, everybody got a free lunch, period. So I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but that was my first introduction to council.
Jason, I mean, you've only been on 2 years. You already talked a couple of little things that you had been involved in. So what do you think you look back as a major accomplishment in your 2 years?
Wow. Well, it's been a very busy 2 years. We have certainly worked on ordinances for several things. I was very involved when we first started to make sure that North Adams had ordinances relative to the legalization of marijuana that made sense for the community. We're still working and revamping those as the Cannabis Commission, the State Cannabis Commission, rolls out their new regulations. I've also been involved in rewriting the ordinances for the Public Arts Commission. So a lot of legislation related to that. And as I said, a lot of projects and concerns that have been important to the community. The gun range, some crosswalk issues that have dragged on and on and on. Not always the way that I wanted them to be resolved, but we resolved them in ways that were in accordance with the ordinances and state statute. We always have to reflect on what Mass General Law, intends for the council. Sometimes federal standards are applied to different issues that we have. So there's a big learning curve to being a counselor, and there's a lot of homework to do to make sure that we're not just making decisions out of thin air. They actually have to follow the law, the laws of North Adams, the state, and sometimes the federal government and the Constitution.
So what would you like to see the council maybe take up not strictly for you, but I mean, we've talked before with other councilors, like you said, the council tends to be very reactive, but there are elements where the council could be proactive
Sure.
in certain things. One of them was the speed limits, the adoption
Yes.
of the 20 mile
Yeah.
per hour state, so you can start looking at streets now and changing them. So what would you like to see the council sort of take on or get more involved in that it has not in the past? Because
well-
council has not been involved in a lot of things in the past, I will say that.
There are
At
a
least
lot
for a
of
long time.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of issues,
Yeah.
regionally in the state and in the country that the council could be looking at. Plastic bag ban, ban of other plastic items. I know many communities are attempting to eradicate the sale of little nip bottles. If you walk around the downtown, nip bottles make up the bulk of the trash on our streets. There are other ordinances relative to taxi and Uber services, ordinances relative to short stay rentals, Airbnbs, things like that. But I think with the right mix of counselors, each counselor brings his or her own agenda items and talents to the council. So I think it's good. We are the legislative body of the city, and just like individual legislators in Boston and Washington bring legislation to the chambers for debate and enactment, we have the opportunity to do a lot of great things to support the mayor and also to make sure that system of checks and balances is in place for the people of North Adams.
And Wayne, do you see anything in particular you think the council should be looking at? I mean, Jason just listed off a lot of them, but you've also you've also got a whole bunch of RFPs that are going to be out there that are going to be coming back to the council too. So
We certainly have to look at, actually the RFPs have been out there and they're out there and they're out there and they're out there, and there's sometimes they're not exactly desirable properties. And they're difficult in finding somebody to want to purchase them. And these are city properties that we've decided that we no longer need and we're trying to dispose of. I mean, what can you do with the Sullivan School? I mean, it's marijuana growing facility, but you don't want that in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So it's difficult. I mean, personally, I'd like to see, I know that the administration is working on this already, but I'd really like to see something done about the commercial tax rate.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up. The commercial tax rate is
I mean, we're
extremely
at
high. What can we do?
$39, I think $39.14 a thousand.
Yeah.
We're the highest in the state of Massachusetts. I mean, I was asked the question last night about economic development, and it was a matter of, well, if we have the highest tax rate in the state, why would somebody want to come and do business here? I mean, I mentioned it last night, there's two businesses, I won't mention their name, that actually have moved recently out of North Adams because of the tax rate. The problem comes in is you can't just say, oh yeah, it's $39 a thousand, we'll make it 18. Because obviously there's only so much money that goes around. So if you're going to shift the burden to the residential one, they're already paying, or having a hard time paying, some people, that tax. The only way you can get that commercial rate down is to somehow lift the levy of the number of dollars that we take in. Right. We're sitting on close to $3 million in debt for people owe us for back taxes. Again, I won't mention a name, but I know somebody in town hasn't paid taxes in 20 years. They're still living in their house. The city has come in and put a lien on the house, but the only way they're ever going to do it is if get the money back is if they sell the house. And in this particular case, they owe so much, they could never sell the house for that much. And the only other way you can get through this is to go through land court. I mean, there's another different ways of doing that, but I think I pay taxes. I'm sure Jason pays taxes. The people that actually pay their taxes, it's not fair to them that when people know that, oh, in North Adams, did you know it's optional to pay taxes?
Well, how do you solve that kind of a problem, though? I mean,
well, the administration has tried hiring a company that would go out and actually take it off the city's hands. I don't know where that went because there was a lot of talk about that when they first started it, and I haven't heard of anything since then.
Well, the, the,
Well,
co- the companies want to be able to make a dollar, so they're going
Yeah.
to be looking at it
Oh,
too,
yeah.
if they can
And there-
afford it.
And it's just a matter of, maybe a commission should be set up in order or something like that to be able to solve that problem. We shouldn't be sitting on all this debt. It's just not fair.
So I agree with a lot of what Wayne just said. You know, we do have a high commercial rate, and the argument for two problems. Number one, you know, the argument for a long time has been that because property values are so low in North Adams, it's okay to have a high rate because at the end of the day, the tax bill on those commercial properties is lower than it would be in the rest of the state. But as the local economy improves, those property values are now increasing, and so we can't maintain a high rate of tax because, as Wayne pointed out, we do want those businesses to come to North Adams and stay in North Adams. The second problem with our tax rate that's going to need to be addressed soon, and really, you know, in the next term, the next 2 years, is that for about 31 years, the council disagreed with it this last time when we set the tax rate, and we'll be looking at the tax rate again in the next few weeks. But for a long time, as Councilor Wilkinson said, we have pushed the burden off of the property owners, the homeowners, onto the businesses, onto the commercial rate. That was a mechanism that really was only supposed to be used in an emergency, but because the economy in North Adams was declining for so long, we did it over and over and over again. The problem with that, of course, is that, you know, we don't want to penalize small businesses, we don't want to have a high commercial rate, but we also know that many people in North Adams are living on low and fixed incomes, and we can't just go out and assign a high rate for property taxes either, because you end up with situations where people cannot pay their taxes. And I certainly remember 20 years after my grandfather passed away, my grandmother lost his pension and she had to live on Social Security, for the rest of her life, and it was a struggle for her. And I know many elderly people in North Adams are faced with the same problem. Everything goes up every year, heating bills and medical bills and property taxes, but people are not getting fat raises in their Social Security. They're not getting fat raises in their salaries, and they have bills to pay and families to support. So we have to be very mindful that we're not imposing a tax rate that makes it unaffordable to live in North Adams.
It's going to be very tough to do that because you also have bills to pay.
Absolutely,
as well.
the city has big bills to pay.
Big bills to
Well,
pay, yeah.
North Adams is not the only
No.
city or town that's struggling with this, but it's something that on the council level should be looked at.
Is there anything else that is important to you that maybe the council hasn't done? When I said this to some of the people who were running the other night, I said, what are you unhappy with the council? What would you do better?
I don't know if it would be done better. I still like to see the council start at an earlier time than 7:30. But I've already gone down that road and got shut down. But it goes to show you that the council should try. If they got something that's, it went to committee, and committee recommended it going down. It just didn't make it back when we got to the whole floor. I know Jason had mentioned before that we go through the proper procedures. It shouldn't take 6 months to get something done. I mean, I think the biggest, the word, if you were to look through the minutes of the council meetings, the word that's used most is postponed.
Yeah.
I know things need to be done in a concise and satisfactory manner, but I mean, Jason had this thing with a Bradley Street crosswalk.
Yeah.
We were what?
Crosswalk.
The Brayton crosswalk.
Wait.
9 months.
9 months.
To be resolved, and it was only resolved because I finally brought a paper back that said it had to be done within 7 days. And believe it or not, it wasn't the solution that I was looking for in the beginning, but it was the solution that the administration basically forced on us, and then 2 months after we voted to remove the crosswalk, it still hadn't been removed. So I brought a paper back that said you're going to do it within 7 days, and magically the next day it was finally removed. But so I think there, there's a lot for, the mayor to administer. There's a lot for the individual departments to administer, but I think it's helpful to have an active council to, as Wayne said, it should never take 9 months to get something done, or 6 months, or, it's important to do things the right way so that we aren't finding mistakes on the backside, but we do need to make sure that things move along in the city.
Yeah. Okay, so
It makes for a long agenda.
It makes for a very long agenda, because you keep having to go back over the same
if you
things
introduce
over
new
again.
stuff, and then all of a sudden you're doing 5 things from the past.
Right, and it gets a little frustrating. I've seen other councils prior to you also get very frustrated with how long it was taking for
Sure.
things to get done, yeah. So one of the goals is to get things moving faster, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. All right, we're running down a little bit on time, so I'm going to let Wayne tell everyone why they should vote for you for city council.
Because I'm a nice guy. No, I think they should vote for me because I think its experience is important. We're going to have new council members one way or another. Even if the entire incumbents get reelected, there should be counselors there to show experience and show the way. I think that's important. I thought I've brought a lot of good things to council. I come prepared. I really enjoy doing it. I show up to meetings. And I'm going to let my record speak for itself.
Okay.
If people are familiar with what I've done, because I just don't want to be a name on a ballot. I want to stand for what I've accomplished.
All right, great. Yeah, Jason, why should we vote? Why should they vote for you?
Well, because I'm a nice guy. as Councilor Wilkinson said. I don't know if everyone would agree with that, but I love the city of North Adams. I love serving the people of North Adams as a city councilor. In my personal life, my professional life, as a nurse, as an executive director of a nonprofit that works to obtain federal funds to repair and upgrade our flood control system. Sorry,
Right.
North Adams is always in my heart, and I've certainly put in the time working across the state, working on legislation and public policy from here to Boston, and been very active in many communities across the state with the MMA. I think that's important. It's important for counselors to not, as Councilor Wilkinson said, not just to show up Tuesday night, look at the papers, and make decisions off the top of their heads. It's important to do the work competently, with compassion, and be very committed to the job, because I believe the people of North Adams are depending on us to do what we were elected for.
Okay, great. It was great having you with us.
Well, thank you so much.
We had a very good discussion. We had a little problem getting some of the candidates here, but we had 2 good ones tonight, and join us for our next episode.